Next, we will be mounting the Hope RF module. So the Hope RF, I've done this in several videos, is just a very particular thing to mount. You do not want to mess this up. They will go back and forth saying that they guarantee you if it doesn't work, most of the time it is because you messed up your Hope RF mounting. So I'm actually going to go ahead and cut myself a piece of tape. I actually use tape around the edge of my filming area to denote where things go. So this is the Hope RF module. It is the last piece we'll be mounting on the bottom here, and it goes right in this spot. We then use a piece of tape on top of the Hope module to hold it in place. The next thing you'll want to do is actually solder the connection between basically this second pad here from the right. You want just enough to make a bridge, and you don't want to do this for too long. Alright, and now you've got to wait 30 seconds in between each solder joint moving forward. You also want to check the alignment of every part to make sure you'll be able to hit every soldering point. I will not. I'm actually off a little bit on my top over here, so I'm going to go ahead and actually realign this. Now, the way to realign this is kind of a pain. So we're actually going to have to heat this back up and just gently rotate it, and then it is good to go. I tend to go ahead and leave the piece of tape on here through my entire soldering process. I also use a phone to count off my 30 seconds. The timer on your phone is like the best way to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the full footage of me doing this. Usually I will just skip and say go check out another video, but considering this is the Quasar build, I want to go ahead and do this all the way through for everyone. So that has been 30 seconds ish, and we're going to go ahead and do the other 6 on the bottom, and then right like that I start my next timer to count up 30 seconds. 30-second wait time is really not that big a deal, but if you do less than 30 seconds, you can risk damaging the Hope RF, and that is just really something you don't want to do, especially when this controls how your entire board works. I tend to do a full 30 seconds on my stopwatch before I stop it, and then I come in and solder. Full connection before I start again. So there's a very detailed section on the webpage about how to do this and how to do it right. I've never found it overly difficult. I know that is not something to be like telling everyone, oh, this is super easy. No, it is definitely not the easiest thing in the world. Your next hardest task you're going to have is mounting the Wi-Fi module, and that's going to be a lot of fun here in a couple steps. But we just go through at every point, and I got to stop bumping the camera. And I've got way more solder on most of these than I really need. It's supposed to be just enough, but I have a lot on there. It is tinned all the way down the side, so you don't actually need to like fill the hole. They actually would recommend you don't fill the hole, because that would be defined as too much solder, which is what I've done on at least 2 of those 4. So we'll try and not on the next, on the remainder. So we just gently heat it up, and just like that is what it's supposed to look like. So it gently arcs up the side of our Hope RF module and then fills the pad but does not fill the hole. Alright. And I tend to do anytime you take heat off, you should wait 30 seconds before going again, which is why I try to maintain the heat on there while I'm going and do this as quickly as I possibly can. It's also a good idea to go ahead and clean your soldering iron in between steps. I haven't been doing that, but it's definitely a highly recommended process. Alright. When I first started soldering these Hope RF modules, I very much stuck to the 45-second concept. Now I'm very much like, oh yeah, 45 was way too long, but I upped it just to make sure I didn't do anything dumb. Now I'm going to rotate it over because we've done all of the ones across the bottom. There's 7 of them. And then we have the 2 on top to solder as well. You do a little cleanup in these times as well, just to kind of keep trash under control. Alright, there we go. That did not want to take initially. Alright, so we only have 1 more left to go. Thankfully we do not have to do any stick soldering for this. The antenna is actually this little guy, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, and he will actually screw on in the hole right here. And I love the little stick antennas way more, or the little 2 dB antennas way more than the stick antennas. I even found a 2 dB screw-on antenna to use with my telemetry module. Good Lord Almighty, that is not wanting to take. There we go. Alright, that is our Hope RF module mounted on there. Next, they heavily recommend you inspect all joints before soldering, or inspect all joints before continuing. The next step is actually to go ahead and flip the board over, which they recommend you then take all these mounting screws off and flip them over so that you can still keep your board off the ground. Alright, so we got the board flipped on over. Everything on the bottom, what was on top is now on bottom. I've got it oriented so the top is here, bottom is here for you guys again. Next thing we're going to be doing is mounting the 10 microfarad capacitor. That is another one of the brown in clear tapes. Just as a reminder, looks like that. We will be mounting it just above our GPS board on this side. So it actually goes right here. 10 microfarads. And it's also marked 10 UF if you were to look. Oh no. Okay, well, my capacitor disappeared. That's problematic. I will have to find that in a moment. Till then, I'm just going to grab another one. Alright, got that fully attached on this side. Come in. That one reattached. Let's add a little more solder to clean that up. Alright, cool. I found my other 10 microfarad. Cool. Misplacing those, bad time. Alright, next we are mounting a 0.1 microfarad capacitor. That is the brown in paper tape. Looks like this, right above that in the location right here. So we'll get that tinned. Grab the capacitor. Get her held in place. Alright, clean that one up nice. Alright, next we're going to be mounting a 331 resistor. It will be going right here on the 331 pad. I will be mounting it such that it reads left right 331 for all of you guys. That will be the same direction that the label is located on the board. So we're gonna tin the pad. Hold of my resistor in here. Hold it in place. Alright, that is our 331 resistor. I'm gonna guess, yes, we're mounting the LED next. Alright, so the LED has the word LED on one pad and the word diode on the other pad. So you can see here, well, not the word diode, it's a picture of a diode on the other pad. And our LED comes in this black plastic thing. On one side of the LED is a piece, there's a green marking. That green marking must go on the same side as the diode in order to work. If we do not do that, it will not work. I'm gonna go ahead and tin the pad here real quick. Alright. I do not know how easy this is going to be to see, but there is a green marking. It is on the side I am holding. Try and get that tacked on there. And I'm going to come back in from the side. That may or may not work. I've never been too concerned about LEDs working perfectly. It is a status LED, so it'd kind of be nice to have it working, but... Next, we will be mounting the buzzer. Alright, next we are doing the buzzer. So the buzzer goes on this big square here. There is a plus marking on the buzzer and a plus marking on the pad on the board. So there's a plus marking here and there's a plus marking on the buzzer here. So, and this thing needs to be perfectly square. So they're saying tin the solder or tin the pad, keep the pad tinned, move the little boy on over. Tack him in place. There is a chamfer mark here. Then they did say, so that was upper left pad. Get a good connection, solder the lower left and lower right pads. Okay, so then we will solder the other two pads here, trying to do it with as little solder as required. Apparently. Alright, I'm going to then touch up this upper pad a bit. I've got a little bit excess on there. Help clean it up some. Alright, and that is our buzzer successfully mounted. Next we have a 10 microfarad capacitor that goes right next to the buzzer. That would be this pad set here. It is brown and clear tape. Yes, brown and clear tape, which thankfully I already have one out from having dropped one earlier. So we go ahead and tin our first pad. Keep that bad boy tinned. And drop our capacitor on there. We'll come in from the back side. Let's angle it a bit so I don't nick the Yep, there we go. The other side again. There we go. 10 microfarad capacitor is mounted right next to it. Next, we'll want to mount a 0.1 microfarad capacitor. It will go right here. Again, the 0.1s are in the paper tape. Alright, so that is our 0.1 microfarad mounted. We're next going to mount a 104 resistor just below the buzzer, so it goes right here. And it will want to read right to left, or sorry, left to right for all of you guys. Basically, you want all the text to match at all times. That's the easiest way of putting this. Alright, that is our 104 resistor. Next, we'll be mounting a 472 resistor below that. So that will mount right here. I just tin that pad real quick. Now the 472 will mount such that the 4 goes at the bottom of the board, 2 goes towards the top of the board. and according to the instructions, that completes the top side of the board. So the next thing is to basically do our Wi-Fi module. Now, I've done a handful of Wi-Fi modules before on the channel and shown how they work. There are a couple pieces that we have yet to mount, but as far as small surface mount components, that should be all of them. So the Wi-Fi module is this little guy right here. Absolute pain in the butt to mount, in my opinion. But it's also pretty easy to mount. Alright, so to do this, I'm going to double check positioning on the camera. It's about exactly how we want it. Cut myself a piece of tape from my stash. Basically, we're going to tape it to the table. So then we're going to use all of these little guys to solder this in place. So basically I'm going to place one through and solder it to the board, clip it, and do that all the way down. I've got only 4 resistor and I have 16 pads to do this with, so it's very important we do it correctly. So when we clip the leads, we're not wanting to clip them at the resistor body. We're actually going to want to clip them about 1/2 inch above the board, which will be about halfway through the body. And then we'll come down and do the next one. That's apparently not clean enough. Alright, now we will come in and clip it flush with the body. So I got 2 per lead, and that's our goal, is to get 2 per lead all the way around. Now, and be careful to not burn yourself. The resistor will get hot as you keep going. And then we've just got a piece of trash. So we'll continue doing that all the way along the Wi-Fi module. As I'm doing this, I will note that I am gently melting the pad underneath, so my cutting mat is actually melting a wee bit every single time I do this. It's just kind of normal for me at this point. I expect it to melt over to not melt. Alrighty, and that's one side, and you'll Notice as you go that most of the pins are not square, straight, or even in the remotest sense of the way you want them. It'll be your job to basically come back in and align them before we have to mount it to the circuit board. Once you do one side, you'll come back in and do the other. And you'll occasionally notice you will get solder to stick to the leads in a very annoying fashion, and you'll have to come back in later and clean those up. Alright, so that's all of our leads. I'm just kind of coming back in here and looking for things that got a little bit of solder, like up the unit or something. So now we've got all these pins that are all kinds of bent all over the place, and we'll want to come back in here and start straightening them out and figure out where they go. Next thing we really want to do is flip the module over, take our diagonal cutters, and trim the leads down. And just make sure none of the parts get left on the board as you're snipping them off. You want to make sure they all end up on the table to be swept off and dealt with. Alright, next we will want to put this on our board. So it will mount on the board in this orientation. And now the hardest part is going to be getting all the pins to line up with the holes they need to go into. It is considerably harder than it sounds. Sometimes I've even gone the distance of shortening the pins. Because it can actually be a lot easier to align shorter pins than it is longer pins. So that's actually what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to go ahead and shorten all the pin lengths by about half. Nice thing about doing this is it makes all the pins the exact same length. That can make your job a little easier as well. So now I have gone ahead and shortened all the pins down. This is not a step outlined by EggTimer. They would actually prefer you left them longer. I prefer getting them shorter because they're much easier to get on and in. And of course I bent one pin over because I didn't get it aligned, which is another thing you've got to keep an eye out for and you cannot let happen. I'm actually going to take this off screen for a moment so I can fight it. I don't really want to break this. I really like the unit to work. I'm going to show you guys how to do this. Alright, and that got it on there. I'm actually going to go ahead and heat up one of these pins. So it's not like perfectly going to want to sit level. That's fine. You want actually a light gap between there. Not as much as I've currently got. Let me read what the exact gap desired is. I want about a 32nd of an inch. So my gap's a little high, so I'm actually going to do a little work off to clean up some of, it's actually excess solder for me that's causing the issue. Alright, now we will actually flip the board over and we're going to solder all 16 pins to the board. So, to go about doing this, we're just very gently going to come in, heat up pin and pad. I should have cleaned off my tip before I did this. And my solder got too short. That's what's happening. You definitely need to be careful as you're soldering over these EPOM and PCA chips. Do not want to heat them up. They are not the desired thing to be soldering or subsequently desoldering. You notice we're coming in, we're getting just enough solder to get pin to pad, and as soon as it takes, we're getting out. So we do not need any more than that in there. Alright, and that mounts our Wi-Fi module on this board. I did kind of forget that when I went and trimmed those leads down, I've got a lot of length. I've got a lot of scrap floating around now. So you want to collect that. You also want to go ahead and come in here on the bottom side of these and trim them down, so there's nothing that could ever break off. So I just come in here with the diagonal cutters. I just quickly blew off the board to make sure there's no debris stuck on it anywhere.